instant hero! Can you believe this? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und Weiß ein Leben lang. Welcome to the mid-season review, SchalkeMerica. This is episode 144. I'm your host, Richard Carmen. Joining me as always, co-host Jack Mangan. Happy New Year, Jack.
Happy New Year to you as well, and a new year with plenty of hope still on the table for us Schalke supporters, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Very much in the mix as we head into the second half of the season here, and all to play for still.
All to play for, exactly. And this is, for once, it's a nice change of pace because the last couple of years coming into this, we're like, we've talked about off air. It's like, thank goodness we needed that break. But we're actually doing well this season so far, and so it's good to talk about it. And it's a lot to talk about. So we're not going to do this alone. We're going to bring in a guest, someone who's got a big following, Schalke Corner, of course. I'm going to bring him in right now, Cedric Zelmat. This guy is someone who we are obviously envious of, does daily content for Schalke. So if you're not following him already, give him a follow. Welcome to the show, Cedric. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Pleasure to be here again. And I'm happy to talk with you about Schalke.
Yeah, it's been a change of pace now since the last time we talked. The last time we had it on our show. Schalke's playing a lot better these days. We're in the running this year for promotion, so that's a nice change, not being at the bottom of the table. How have you found Schalke life this year compared to maybe like last year?
Yeah, for me it's surprising that the second or the zweite Bundesliga is makes so much fun. I thought before it will be a bad year for us fans, but I think it's a good time. I identify myself with the team again. Last year, or in the first division, it wasn't like that. So for me, it's a good start in the season, and I like it.
I hope if I didn't unmute myself there. Hey, Jack, I agree with what he said because we kind of refound ourselves because it's for the last couple of years, it's been a struggle for us. And now to be able to actually enjoy the games, it's been a nice turning point. How have you found the last year or last 6 months or whatever it is this season so far compared to the last?
Yeah, I would certainly agree, and I think some of that was aided by how much of a clean slate it was in terms of the squad rebuild and some changes in leadership and everything. So, you mentioned like not identifying with the squad as much in the first division. It's easier to kind of transition back and do some good feelings in that direction when so much of the team just leaves and there's like an entirely new roster of players. And for me, that's been like the highlight. I feel like I think Schroeder's done a really nice job with the people that he's brought in. I feel like we absolutely have the personnel to get promoted. It's just a matter of kind of unlocking the potential of that group and making the right things happen. And we're in the mix, and so it's still been entertaining, right? I mean, it's been watchable football for the most part. Obviously, I mean, we've had a couple seasons where it's been pretty brutal at times. Even if we're winning games, it's not attractive to watch. And I think it's certainly been an improved brand of football, to see on a week-to-week basis. And the fact that there's results coming forward is just kind of the cherry on top. So yeah, it's been a much better season for me, much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think because, also not be able to identify the team because you mentioned it, so many new players on the team, which I didn't know the statistic until a couple of days ago, but of the top 10 profits made from the offseason, Schalke were 10th, 38.8 million euros they made because of all the sales that they had. They had to, right? We had to offload a bunch of players, bring in a bunch of new ones, Roven Schroeder doing a bunch of magic. But yeah, it's been an interesting season. We knew Zweite Liga was going to be difficult, right? It always is. And what we saw is a bunch of teams that were going to be in the mix of the running before we even got involved or any of the Bundesliga clubs. But we're currently fourth place, 30 points. Not bad. Cedric, going into the season, did you think we would have a strong chance at getting back promoted, or you think it was going to be a year of more struggles?
Before or now?
Before the season.
Before the season. Yeah, before the season, I thought it maybe we can go to third division because it was it was hard. We lost our completely squad and we changed everything. And maybe it's good, but maybe when you make the wrong decision, you can go to third division. But when we saw the first games, I think that everyone was clear that this doesn't happen. And for me now, it's only the thing that we go up to the first division.
Yeah, Jack, I think we kind of share those sentiments. Is that we didn't know what to expect, right? We didn't know that the players are going to work or not. Yeah, we knew that guys like Teroda was coming in and some other guys, but we didn't know if it was going to work, and there was a strong potential that we could have got relegated once again. I mean, it was so many unknowns.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's watched the Netflix series Sunderland Till I Die, the specter of a double relegation in Division. I didn't want to think about that too much, but technically it's there. And when you have an entirely new squad and a manager that you really don't have much of a handle on, because what was Gramatsis really supposed to do on the back end of the previous season when he got appointed? He's not really in a position to impact things that much. There's a lot of question marks. You don't know how it's going to pan out. But the one thing we did know, as we've said repeatedly, is that this was not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be a situation where you're going to go down into the Zweite Bundesliga and then pop back up easily and immediately necessarily. It was going to be a slog. And so there's different ways of looking at it. It's on one way is we're tied on points for third place, and another is that we're also tied on points for like sixth place and a result away from ninth place. Something, you know what I mean? Like the table is so tight and it's so congested, and that speaks to, once again, just kind of the level of the competition. And even the team that's clear, so to speak, is really only two results. It's not like they have a 12-point lead or something like that. It's two matches, two quick wins. It's 6 points between St. Pauli and where we are. So that's what I meant at the top, is just still a lot to play for. I mean, in both ways, this could get pretty for us, or it could get ugly for us like pretty quickly, depending on how we start off when we return from the break here. So like I said, a lot of hope, but a lot of anxiety too, because you're still not sure about how it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think Cedric, he hit the nail on the head, because it's so tight right now, and a couple of results can really swing you either to the top or further down the table. And Jack and I kind of set this timetable of the next few games up until February 14. If we start at those games really great, we're going to be doing well. If we struggle, it may be a long season. And what are your thoughts on the season so far? Obviously, we're in the mix, right? It's obviously a positive result. But again, a couple of results, if we don't start at the Rückrunde hot and heavy, we could be in a mid-table position really quick.
For me, it's the first half of the season was development. We saw at the first a completely new team. They have to find each other on the field, and I think Gramatsis in the first games he was looking like a good defending squad, so that the team is very has a good stability. And after that, there was a short time after the game against 1860 or the other games where we haven't this stability anymore. And the last games of the first half of the season were very good in the offensive and very good defensive. So we have a good now we have a good a word is missing for me, but it's we have both sides. We have a good offensive
balance.
Plan, and yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. And we can now go in the second half with a good developed team, and I hope we play like Nuremberg and the other like HSV before, and when we go like that in the second half of the season, then we play good football, I think.
Yeah, it's been a crazy up and down season. I mean, consistency is what we're looking for, right? And not seeing my face is another thing. But look, I mean, you look at some of the scores from this season. We obviously started the season on the wrong foot, right? Losing to Hamburg. But we followed that up quickly with a win against Holstein Kiel. Had some decent results until we played Jan Regensburg, a team that always starts out very well. They demolished us, and it kind of demoralized us there. But then we got our foot back on track, got some wins, lost to Karlsruhe. But lately, it seems like we're starting to get a little bit more consistency. It helps being out of the Pokal. I mean, losing to 1860 was not a good thing there, but
yeah, that was the stretch of the season where things got dark because we lost that game. Then I think we lost like 3 consecutively. We had the Sandhausen result to bounce back, and then St. Pauli again. So I think what was that, like 4 out of the 5 games where we lost? That was where I think a lot of the harder questions were being asked for sure.
Yeah, that Sandhausen game I think was big, getting 5 goals against them. We said, Cedric, I know in our show we said that we had to win against Sandhausen because they were at the bottom of the table. And if we had any chance of promotion this year, we'd had to win that game. Did you feel that game was important for us to win as well?
Yeah, very important. You see, before we have bad results, and for me, it's like a turning point because after the game of Sandhausen, we have a great win against Nuremberg. And I think St. Pauli and HSV were good games too. Maybe we don't win both games, but they are both teams which want to go up, and I think against St. Pauli, it's Burgstaller was the key factor that they win the game, and we play in the front with Dadashov and not with Terodde, for example. So for the game what we play against St. Pauli, for me, it's with the Terodde you can win the game.
Yeah, in those dark times, you mentioned Terodde. When he went down, we were worried. How are we going to score? I mean, for the most part of the season, it was him and Bulter, which was nice when they're healthy. But we even said at the beginning, we remember from last year when Harit and Serdar, they started scoring so well in the first half of the season. And we're like, what happens if they go down or they stop scoring? Who else is going to score? And we found out nobody, right? And so that was our fear. We had this very recent history about what happens if we don't have backup scorers. So when Terodde went down, we were really unsure. And I think guys like Thomas Oyan stepped up, and some of these other guys, Salazar, kind of really emerged into starting position, really helped the team stay consistent. And I think we started to find our offensive philosophy when Terodde went down because we were so heavily dependent on him, Jack.
Yeah, and I guess I would. The only spot where I'd kind of disagree with, or just kind of not differ from Cedric's take, is just that for me, in terms of my confidence levels, I'm probably a little bit less confident in us offensively, even though like the underlying numbers I think are good. I just think there's a lot that's a little bit more unconvincing on that side of the ball. I have a lot of confidence in us at the back as long as we keep that, that main 3 healthy. They've been excellent all season. But the one thing that is positive is, some of these absences and injuries and suspensions and other things that have taken place have actually allowed us to get a decent look at a number of other guys who probably wouldn't be the starters. But now we have confidence in some of them and know that, if something does happen, if Terodde goes down again, if Bulter is out again, if, Paulson, gets a red card or something along those lines, or if Denny Lazza can't step. We know that there's all these people that actually can put in good performances and contribute, and so we have some different options and at least like a decent plan B in some situations. So that's kind of been like the big positive for me in terms of the first half is really getting that knowledge of the squad in different situations with different combinations, and hopefully now we can put that into good effect in the second half. And if we do come into situations where we have some people missing, it's less guesswork and it's more like we have some tested formulas and we know kind of what to go to. So that's going to give us a better chance.
Yeah. Cedric, so far on the first half of the season, what's been going good for us? What players do you think we're good? What do you think's been going really well for us so far this first half of the season?
Like Jack said, I think the 3 in the back are very good. Like Itakura, he is a great player for us, because like day one, he plays every game very, very good. The last games he scored goals. I think Kaminski is for me a bit like Nastasic. He's on the left. He's he's not the player to watch, but what he makes is always okay. It's always good.
Good passes, yeah.
And Schau is a good talent, so the three are very good. For me, Palsson is a very good player. I don't expect it when we buy him, because I thought, yes, he just played second division. He's a bit of old, and but when I saw him, I knew that he can give us on the center back the tacklings that we need to get the ball back, and to have their good stability. And I think Terodde make the same like in HSV or Stuttgart or Köln. So he plays like the same in the second division, and it's very good to have a player in the front that can score goals. I think we have a good stability behind, and we have a good mentality, and that are the points that are good for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a couple of years since we've had a proven goal scorer that we could rely on, right? It's probably since Huntelaar that we had the first time around that we had someone that we could really depend on. Not necessarily to get all the goals, even though he was in the beginning of the season. But at least we feel more comfortable that someone can score. Last year, we didn't know who was going to score outside of Harit or Serdar. So it's a nice change of pace. I think for me, Thomas Oyan was a nice surprise. I didn't know really anything about him, and he's done what we were looking for a while now, right? Since probably Ochipka's early start of the career with Schalke, getting down the left-hand flank, maybe even back to Seo's when he was first time with Schalke, someone going down the left-hand side, providing crosses, providing offensive spark. Aiden getting him, some of the young guys, more pitch time. Him, Aiden, Idrizi, Cherlenov was a nice surprise as well, I think. And I agree with you guys. I think the back three, they've been really the core of us this year. They've been consistent. They've been good. And the $1 million question now is Salif Sane coming back. Does he take one of those guys' spots? I mean, like, those guys are all playing well. It seems unfair if one of those guys lose their spots. Cedric, your thoughts on does Salif Sane take somebody's spot, or does he have to sit and wait for one of these guys to mess up?
Yeah, I think Kaminski will not play because of the coronavirus. So I think Salif Sane has a good chance to play the next game, and we know when he's fit, he can play good in the Bundesliga. So I think in the second division, he makes it also good. We can talk about maybe if Sané comes in the team, if maybe Itakura goes in the midfield. It's an option.
Yeah.
But I think when Salif Sane is fit, you have to put him on the team. I think maybe he's a bit better than Kaminski for me.
Jack, it's funny, Salif Sane is also one of our best strikers apparently too. We saw that in the last game where he was really good at striker. But you and I also talked about maybe not changing the back three, but putting Salif Sane in the midfield, right? Because he was a holding midfielder for Hanover back in the day. What are your thoughts on Salif Sane and where he could fit or not fit in the back three?
Well, yeah, obviously his highest level of usefulness is as a aerial threat super sub late in games. Just throw forward and try to get on the end of some of those long balls and corners and everything. Yeah, I think the point that Cedric brings up is actually really interesting, because if there was a guy in the back three that you think is probably the most likely to be replaced by Sane, probably is Kaminski. And the fact that Kaminski might not play the game, and so you're going to get that direct comparison immediately. You know what I mean? Like, Kaminski's out. Let's see how the team looks with Sane in, which is kind of the change that you'd be making. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out if it goes down that way and Sane gets to start. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you would think that Sane would probably slide back into the starting lineup. But I mean, Kaminsky's been better than I expected that he would be. I think he's generally very solid defensively. He's not often getting exposed. There's not a lot of moments in matches where you're like, wow, he really got burned there, or he misjudged that. And then on in possession, he's been very good at times, and he's scored a couple goals. Had that big winner, didn't he, against who was that? Like in the 90th minute, I forget what game that was.
Oh yeah,
was that?
I can't remember now.
Doesn't matter anyway. I mean, so he's had some moments. He's played some really nice passes. So he's I think it would be a little bit harsh on him. Like, he certainly doesn't deserve to be dropped if that were the case. But the more options we have, the better, in my opinion. And as you mentioned, like, yeah, if Paulson's injured or something, you could put Salif Sane potentially kind of at the base of that midfield, and presumably he could do that role, equally well. Maybe. So we'll see. There's definitely a lot of options there. I hadn't really considered Itakura moving further up, but now we've seen his abilities to link in the final third as well with the goal that he scored pretty late on. So that was nice. This is the point I'm trying to make, is we have options now. Like, the squad maybe slightly thin still in some places, but we've seen enough rotation where I think we have confidence that, pretty much anywhere if somebody drops off, there is a reasonable solution that you're not upset about. At least you're not like, oh God, like this guy's in the starting lineup. Even Ranful, who I was critical of early on, has put in better performances kind of later on in the season. So you have a decent confidence level amongst a lot of the squad.
Well, that's interesting transition. We bring in Ranful and some thin spots. Let's talk about what's not worked so well this year, right? Being thin is one, right? I think the striker position, we found out up until recently, we thought it was a big struggle for us, because once Terodde and Bulter were out or struggling, what was going to happen there with the striker position? I think what we found at the very end was that putting Peringer and Cherlunov together actually worked very well. It was a nice B complement to Terodde and Bulter. Cherlunov, I wanted to see a lot of this year, and I kept screaming for him to be at the top of the striker position with Peringer, and it finally worked out, and it looked nice. Not gonna take any kind of credit for that, but there's a lot that's not gone well this year. Cedric, we've done well so far, but what's not worked for you? What do you want to see us do better in, or where do you think we need to get maybe more players? What are your thoughts?
I think offensive processes like moving and combinations on the field, I think that is missing a lot. And when we see the starting squad, I think that we have 3 players. For me, maybe they aren't good to go to the first division. It's maybe the goalkeeper, the player behind Salazar on the midfield. I'm not talking about Parson. I think the player next to Salazar. And on right back, we have some problems with Ramftel. Aydin has some good games, but also some bad games. He's a young player. But for me, these are our players to watch on the transfer market at the moment.
Those interesting points, Jack. What are your thoughts on where we need to improve on this second half?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with those takes just now. I think something else that you and I have talked about a lot over the course of the season is just the lack of ideas sometimes in possession. When we actually get into sort of a set shape in possession, we're trying to work things. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of as much off-ball movement as you want in any sort of like set move. You know what I'm saying? It's just, there just seems to be very little structure and very little direction from Gramatsis in terms of like how they should actually go about trying to create the openings for themselves and negotiate their way through. It really seems that a lot of our strength in the team is either set pieces or a transition and some of those counterattacking moves. Once things open up and we don't get bogged down in these structures, then you actually start to see, I think, the quality of these players and the ability to improvise and move around and everything. But too often our default shapes don't allow them that freedom or, the creativity or whatever the situation is. And so that's kind of been the thing throughout the entire first half of the season that I just don't feel like has improved at all, which is why I've been a little bit critical of Gramatsis, despite the fact, once again, he has us tied for third place. So we're very much in the mix. I'm not trying to be like overly critical, but that's kind of like a part of our game that I feel is largely the coaching responsibility. Like we have the personnel, they show it in other moments. So to me, it's like you have to have the coach has to be able to provide those ideas to the team. And I just don't think that's been there.
And I think we talked about this, right? We've talked about how so much this year we look like we just didn't know what you were doing offensively, right? The back 2/3 of the pitch, we seem good. Once we get to the final third, we don't know what we're doing in there. We often don't get many shots out there. And it seems funny because the Hamburg match, the last game of the Hindrunde for us, we actually look very good offensively, right? And I think it's as a result of Terodde and Bulter being injured, we had to find new ways to try to create offensive opportunities. And in that Hamburg match, we were creating a lot of opportunities. We just weren't scoring, right? At the first game, we had like 29 shots or something crazy, but nothing was on target. And the problem was the opposite up until that point. So maybe we're starting to find a groove offensively. I don't know, but I agree with that point 100%.
Yeah, I mean, Cedric, I guess I would just ask you, like, how have you felt the attacking football, that phase of our game has been, I mean, everything has been bad the last couple seasons. We've had plenty of games where we've shipped a lot of goals as well. But for me, it's just like we've had nothing going forward. It's certainly been better this season. But I mean, do you see things differently in terms of, I guess, the job that Gramatsis is doing in that phase of the game?
I think we have improved when we saw the last season, but it isn't very very hard to improve there. But when we see, I think my problem is in the midfield. A long time in the season, we have just one player on the midfield that bring the ball to the front. For me, it's Salazar. Because Palsson is the guy who is in the defensive. He look not for the front. He brings not the ball to the front, and when he does it, maybe he dribbles and lose the ball and make a tackling, and maybe he get a red card. But the player behind him, there is. They haven't too much speed, like for example Drexler or Lazza. I think that is missing. They can't bring the ball with a dribbling to the front, and this is a point that I'm missing in our game. And Salazar in the first matches, he wasn't also as good as he is now. So. I think that is really the problem in the first of the season, and I think not that Terodde is losing in the last games. I think that Idrissi, a player, he has this ability to bring the ball to the front with speed, with dribblings. He fulfills the position very, very good, and he make that what I want to see. Maybe we can find a player who is better than Idrissi, but I think Idrissi has the abilities for the system of Gramatsis to bring our offensive back to the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Jack and we talked about how many of us, and maybe just me, we all thought, or I thought, that Salazar would be like our 10, right? A number 10, the attacking midfielder. And he's more of a box-to-box midfielder. He plays that role very, very well. He's good going forward. He hustles backwards. He puts in a lot of effort in the game. So we think that he's probably a sure fit for the starting 11. The question was always the two in the midfield, right? Who would be next to him? And for a while, Salazar wasn't even in the picture. It was Lazza and Drexler and whoever, or Paulsen. And we kind of lean towards Drexler a little bit because he's done some good things, but you're right. There's no one creating the offensive spark, not like Amin Harit had done in the past. And so Idrissi showed us some glimpses in that last game that were like, okay, maybe he has that potential to be a partner for Salazar, because Salazar gives you the box to box, and we just need someone to go forward while you have Paulsen in the back kind of slowing things down. So Jack, that midfield needs some work, or at least better play or maybe Idrissi stepping up more than he already has.
Yeah, so what I would say is I think I do rate Drexler a little bit higher than Cedric does, but I agree that the ball progression element of his game is lacking, and we do need somebody else centrally who can provide that on a more consistent basis, because it's basically always always Salazar, and he just kind of runs himself ragged, which I think over the course of games probably hurts his decision making in the final third too, just because he's just like, exhausted and just constantly trying to make things happen. I think Drexler's best. Actually, he's the times where I feel like he does his best work is actually when he gets wide, kind of on like Bulter sides, when Bulter kind of dives back more central, and like Drexler can play some nice balls from that area, and stuff. But I agree that like in terms of his actual ability to drive things forward, essentially it's lacking. And I think my follow-up question to Cedric was going to be, okay, so is there a guy in the squad that you think can fill that role? And he mentioned Idrizi, and that's what I thought was interesting, is that, Richard, you and I have talked about a lot that we expected some of these youth players who had gotten some looks towards the end of last season to be more involved in the squad than they were. We didn't see Idrizi almost at all this season until kind of later on, which I was surprised about.
Yeah.
Specifically for those reasons. So yeah, I think you and I've said that, like, yeah, maybe Idrizi can start getting that super sub role, kind of like, 60th minute if we're chasing the game and need a little bit more offensive spark. Maybe he's the guy that comes in centrally to help provide that. Yeah, maybe he ends up getting the starting job as well overall. I think Drexler provides some nice balance, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's room to improve, particularly going forward. And I would love to see guys like Idrizi get more opportunities than they had in the first half of the season.
And I'm glad you brought up the younger players, because I agree. We wanted to see the younger players get more opportunity. Aiden's got some opportunity this year fairly consistently. Idrizi not so much. Chan Bazdowan kind of got out of the picture. Obviously, Katuchu did as well. We got rid of him. And so we had high hopes that it would be Malik Thiaw and Timo Becker leading the way, because both those players are probably our better players last year. And then this year happened, and Timo Becker is nowhere to be found. Cedric, we don't know what's going on with him. I mean, maybe you get better insight being in Germany, but what's going on with Timo Becker? Why hasn't he been in the starting 11 picture as much as we had hoped?
I think Timo Becker is, for a lot of fans, a very big figure to identify, because when we go to the second division, everyone can see it in front of his eyes that he was crying at the stadium, and he was with the fans in the Nordkurve celebrating. So he identifies himself with the club very, very much. But for me, when he don't get many chances this season, but when he for me, it wasn't very good. I think maybe he need to a bit practice, more game practice, maybe in the second squad, to get himself back to the front, to the first squad. And so I can understand Gramotzes when you just saw him on the field.
Yeah, no, I agree about that. And I think, Jack, one, we thought he was going to be one of our top options on the right-hand side, and he really is third in the pecking order behind Ranfel and Aiden. It seems like, Jack, whoever we kind of pull for on this podcast, they seem to be shipped to the asylum or to exile, right? So maybe we should start cheering for Mendel or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, that's an interesting point on Timo Becker there, Jack. It's been something that's been head scratching for us, because we had such high hopes for him, like we said.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that he's not getting looks at center back or anything, given how good those guys have been, and the fact that he wasn't always really in that role anyway. But yeah, it was just always surprising, because, as we said, I felt like him and Malik Chow were fairly convincing at a Bundesliga level, relative to the rest of the squad throughout some of those bad performances. And so it was just very surprising that he wouldn't be able to continue those kind of performances in the way that Malik Chow has. And the fact that we haven't seen him at all, that's why I feel like there has to be something else kind of going on behind the scenes, because it's not even like he hasn't gotten that many substitute appearances or anything. And especially when you look at that sort of like right wing back role, how many different guys have been there and how much rotation there's been in there. Yeah. It's surprising that Timo Becker hasn't even featured there, really, given how many people are coming through that kind of revolving door. You've had Sherlinov there, you've had Ranfel there, you've had Aiden there. There's people that are getting looks there. So the fact that he's just been anonymous has been surprising. But we'll see how that goes. And worst case scenario, injuries come, something like that. There's another piece of depth potentially that you would at least be open to seeing get an opportunity. So yeah, definitely.
I feel you.
I feel like you and I, clearly you and I have different judges' valuations of player performances, because this happens a lot with us with the new players. I mean, like Katucci and other guys, you're right. So it's maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But I think he's decent.
Hamza Mendel. Free Hamza Mendel. Before we get into some of the predictions for the second half of the season, I want to get Cedric's thoughts on Gramotzis. He has obviously improved us defensively, and we're obviously in the running for the promotion right now. But at times this season, it looks like he's been lost. And it was important for him to end the Hindrunde on a good run, which he did, to get us back in the third position. But now it's a very if we were going to make a manager move, it was going to be now, right? And that didn't happen, obviously. So I mean, Roven Schroeder is going to go with him, but I imagine he's going to have a short leash, meaning a few games. If he doesn't do well, he could be gone quickly, because honestly, if you don't make the move by early February, what's the point? Because it's already too late. What are your thoughts on what Gramotzis has done this season? And just how do you feel on him?
I have the same questions for me, especially before the Sandhausen game. There was a time where I think, okay, we lost now our defensive stability and everything which Gramotzis stands for, we have lost in the last games. And I was thinking before the break for the national team that we can change him on this time. But after that, he wins against Sandhausen and play very good game against Nuremberg. And now he have to get serious. He have to win a lot of games so that we go in a good position for the end of the season. That we can play against St. Pauli and the other hard games, and we can play with confidence in the last games. And I think when he lost one game, it's not so bad for him. But when he lost more than 2 or 3 games, it will be very difficult for him.
Yeah, Jack, and it's an interesting run of fixtures here to start off the Rückrunde. So we got Holstein Kiel coming up next Sunday, followed by Aue, Regensburg, and Dusseldorf. So I think those are going to be some tough games to see really what Gramotzis is made of and Schalke is made of. What are your thoughts on, like, I know you said your confident level before we went on the break that it was better because we had done better against Hamburg and Nuremberg. Coming now out of the break, and I mean, you can take the friendly aside because nobody really judges those. How are you feeling with those 4 games? Someone, I guess you can call it gauntlet coming up ahead.
Yeah, the start that we have to the second half of the season is going to be crucial. If we drop a couple games, it's going to be catch up mode, and we're going to have to be excellent, the rest of the way. And if we get a couple good games in, then we have some cushion to play around with in case we have additional injuries and some things like we've seen in the first half of the season. My default standing, I think, is still very much that I think we have the personnel to get promoted. I believe in the talent that we have in the squad. I think there's enough pieces there to get us over the hump. I have slightly less confidence in Gramotzis' ability to give the squad what they need to actually achieve the results that we're going to need to get promoted. But at the same time, I mean, once again, we're in the mix. We're very much there. We had 2 points kind of stolen from us. Was that the Bremen game? I forget. The ghost penalty. I mean, there's things that have gone. I mean, it could have even been better in that regard. I mean, so we're there. We're thereabouts. And so it's difficult to pull the trigger. I understand why Gramotzis is still here. From Roven Schroeder's perspective, he hasn't been bad enough to get rid of. The team is still, the problem though, I think at the same time is now that we're this deep into the season, I think we've almost kind of missed the window of opportunity to get rid of the coach and have it really actually affect anything and get the results, because there's not going to be a lot of time left. If we get 4 or 5 games into the second half of the season and then we fire Gramatsis, then a new guy has to come in. It's going to take several match days for him to implement anything, and then it's just kind of what's the point. So at this point, I think we're kind of riding or dying with Gramatsis, and I hope that over the winter break he's come up with a couple new ideas, some other things to try and see if we can get that extra 10%, 5-10% out of the squad, which is I think what we need to get over the hump, because once again, generally the underlying numbers on both ends of the pitch are good. It's just there's just that little bit lacking for me at the moment.
And to be fair, Roven Schroeder is riding or dying on Gramatsis at the moment, because for all the good that Roven Schroeder has done this year, I think he's been phenomenal for what he's done with upheaval, changing the team, everything. But ultimately you're judged on whether you get promoted or not, and so that comes down to whether Gramatsis makes it or not. And you can have a discussion if we get promoted whether Gramatsis is the right man for the Bundesliga, but that's another story. The main focus right now is getting promoted and see what can happen here under Gramatsis. Lost my earpiece there. So while we are looking ahead to the next or second half of the season, real quick, goals of the season. We had some really nice goals this year, much more to choose from than last year. Last year, there was very difficult to find some goals. We probably had like 5 goals in the first half of the season, it feels like. I know one goal sticks out for me, and I'm going to wait because I'm sure you guys probably have the same one. But Cedric, for you, what was your best goal of the season so far?
For me, clearly the Eiding goal with the karate kick. It's very, very nice.
Yeah. Jack, is that going to be your answer as well?
That was the most spectacular goal for sure.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ones that was in contention for me. Because he picked that one, I'll pick a different one. For me, I'm actually going to go with, I think it was Terada's second goal against Dusseldorf, which I think was maybe our third goal in the match. But it's a goal that kind of just comes from nothing, and to me sort of epitomizes what Terada brings at his best, which is what we've been missing so much. So like that's a ball that kind of just gets lofted kind of to the top of the box in the center of the defense, and he has his back to goal, uses his body, boxes out the defender, plays it off his chest, turns, and just immediately like fires like in kind of like one fluid motion to bring the ball in, turn, get the shot off, and he just drains it. And it was that kind of thing. You're like, wow, how great is it to have a competent striker actually on your team for once, like somebody that can do those sorts of things with that kind of nice authority and lack of hesitation. So yeah, that would be the one for me, as I think it just kind of epitomizes what Terada's all about. And
he's been a good playmaker too. It's not just like he's going for goal, right? He's actually been better playmaker than Bulter. Bulter's mostly going for goal than not. Obviously, the Iden goal is the best goal of the first half, but I'm also going to go differently just to be a different flavor here. And for me, not necessarily the best goal, but a big goal, I think, was when Terada finally broke the record. Because we kind of joked about it and didn't think it was going to happen, but it kind of did happen, where once he tied the record, sometimes we see in other sports when a player ties a record, to break the record is so hard, they think about it too much and they can't score anymore. And we saw that with Terada for a while. Granted, nobody was passing to him well. We didn't play well together, but when he finally got the goal, I said, okay, whew, forget about that. Now we can focus on playing well. So it was nice that he finally broke the record and we can stop thinking about it and just focus now on his game. So that's going to be my shout, but I agree. That goal was the Karate Kid. It was beautiful what he did there. So sensational karate kick volley that you don't see very often. So that's good. That's good. Let's go. Moving on. Let's see. Ideal starting 11. This is an interesting topic, and I think we're going to be, for the most part, the same. But I'm curious to see what everyone's thoughts are on the starting 11.
I think we're going to be very similar. So Cedric, why don't you just take it away? Give us your ideal starting 11, and if there's any revisions or other changes or suggestions, we'll kind of comment at the end. But I'm sure we'll probably be pretty lockstep.
Okay, then I have Reisel as a goalkeeper, left back Aoyan, then the center, like we say, Kaminski, Itakura, and Chow. Right back for me was the best player, Aydin. Parson as defensive midfielder. Then Salazar, next to him, Idrissi, and on the front, Bulter and Terode.
Okay. Jack?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. The only things I would maybe we haven't seen enough of Sane, I think, this season to make the call. I think there's a chance that I would probably end up putting Sane in the back three, but I think we need to see it before I could say it. I'm still kind of fine with Drexler for the moment in the midfield, but I wouldn't be upset about Idrisi being there, and my opinion might change over the season, and I might be fully in Cedric's camp, sooner rather than later on that. And I would also agree, I think Aiden over the course of the year has given you just a little bit more in terms of the ceiling than like Ranford, some of the other guys. So I would probably give him the nod, but that position certainly isn't entirely locked down yet. Despite some other guys we've seen up top contributing, it has to be, Tirada and Bulter. I think the narrative that Schalke plays better without Tirada. Like I understand where that's coming from, and I think there's some data points to support that. But like the guy had 12 goals in the first half of the season while missing a number of games. Like he's starting. Like you brought him in for a reason. You're gonna put him in the starting lineup. Unless for some reason he goes on some sort of horrific drought and just doesn't look himself and kind of fades away over the course of the year. But yeah, it's gonna be Bulter and Tirada. Both of them I think are good. They can both create as well. They're not just scoring goals; they're assisting and setting up teammates, and that kind of combination play is nice, and they provide a good complement for each other. Both are dropping a little bit deeper and kind of linking up, and Tirada being kind of pinned up high and being the target man. So, I'm mostly there with Cedric for sure.
I thought both of you were going to say that Cherlenov and Perringer at the top, but I guess not, huh? No, I think I'm agree with you guys. I mean, I think the midfield is going to be the question. I think at the moment, based on the season so far, I'd slightly pick Drexler over Idrisi, but if Idrisi is going to play like he did the last couple of games, Idrisi for me. And by the end of the season, I'm hoping it is Idrisi just because he does provide more of the offensive opportunity. But it's I think we're all pretty much on the same side here. I mean, I'd love to put Cherlenov in that starting 11, but where do you put him, right? Aiden does really well on the right-hand side. It's a good complement to Oyan on the left. Salazar has to start just because of his work rate. And then Tirada and Bulter up top. I love seeing Bulter always angry, no matter happy or not. I love seeing Bulter out there. And then Tirada is a competent striker, which we hadn't had in a long time. And so, yeah, I think Cherlenov and Sane just missed the starting 11 for me, I think. So
one thing I did want to mention that I thought was interesting, I love the thoughts from both of you on this, is I think it's funny that arguably one of the highest profile signings for us was Dani Lazza, and he was not included in anybody's starting 11, and I don't think many of us are particularly high on him at the moment. So I'm curious just kind of like how you feel about that, like how that's worked out so far halfway through the season. Once again, injuries and stuff also contributing to that, but
yeah, how do you rate Dani Lazza, Cedric? Because I think I'm sure is in the back room, in the locker room, he does really good stuff, worthy of a captain. And I'm not gonna go against Gramotis' pick for him as a captain. But I think on the pitch, it's where he's not as good as Paulson. I don't think as good as Drexler. When he's been out there, he's not as good. Now, granted, he's been injured most of the season, but for me, he's coming off the bench as a substitute. I don't see him in a starting role. What is your opinion on Dani Lazza?
I think Dani Lazza had a good preseason and a good few minutes against HSV in the first game. And after he get injured, you see that the team wasn't like before. I think he was a very important player for the squad in the first game. But after he comes back from his injury, I think he hasn't the fitness level to help us, and I think it was too early to bring him in the starting 11. It was early too as a substitution. So I don't understand why you put in that time Salazar out and plays with Lazza and Drexler. And I think when he gets a good preseason, when he get a good fitness level, that he can help us. And I think maybe he can play in the starting 11, but he have to improve himself and must show that he can play that he play in the Bundesliga for Mainz. When he play like the last games we see from him, it isn't enough to play for us in the starting 11.
Okay, Jack.
No, yeah, I
that's
think
a fair
that's
assessment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair and pretty measured take. I was just curious because once again, I think that was one of the higher profile people that we brought in, like one of the bigger names, and he's been not an important part of what we've been doing so far. Some of that due to injury and some other things, but but the positive spin on that, as I've said multiple times, is what if he does improve? And once again, that's just more depth and additional options that you have in case things go bad. So these are good problems to have, and rather have that than be searching for answers, I guess, off the bench potentially.
Like last year.
Yeah.
100%. All right, before we make our predictions, I'm going to say it's good. We usually give out awards in these mid-season things, and I saw Reddit had this nice mid-season award. So I'm just going to say a category. You just tell me real quick what player goes in that category. All right, let's start things off. MVP. Jack, who's your MVP of the first half of the season?
Oweyan.
Okay, Cedric?
I go also with Oweyan.
That's going to be all three of us. I think Thomas Oweyan was a fantastic player first half of the season. All right, most exciting player, Jack.
Oh yeah.
All Oweyan.
Most exciting. This is gonna be kind of a weird pick. I'm actually gonna go with Bulter.
Timo Becker. Bulter.
I'm just gonna go with Bulter partially just because of his celebrations and the facial expressions. Like, I don't think anyone brings me to like the peak of emotion than Bulter does when he's celebrating a goal or something like that. So that's who I'll go with. But I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, you could put Oweyan, you could do Tirada, you could do Salazar. There's a lot of options there.
Cedric, who's your most exciting player?
For me, it's Salazar in the midfield because he make a lot of moves and dribblings, and he brings a lot on the field, like shooting and passing, and he make a lot of good stuff. Sometimes he make bad decisions, but he's very exciting.
I am going to go, probably no surprise to Jack, but for me, I'm going to go Darko Cherlinov. I think the times that he's been out there, he's done some good things in the last couple of games when he's been up top with Peringer. He's done some nice things and created a lot of opportunities. He's not quite Amin Harit in terms of X factor, but he has a potential. And if you bring him off the bench when people are tired, it may be a really nice compliment to have there. So I'm gonna go Cherlinov.
You're finally exposing the depths of your fandom for Cherlinov. You've been flirting with it for a lot of the season, but I think that was the dead giveaway.
All right, best signing this from the preseason, I guess. We haven't made any signings yet, so let's go Cedric this time with you first. Who's your best signing this year?
I think also Oweyan, because for me, he's the best left back, or maybe he's the best player in the second division. And you get him on a loan for free, and you get the option to buy him. I think it's just 2 million. So of a player of his quality, it's a very cheap price in my opinion.
Jack?
I think I would probably say Oweyan. I mean, you could also say Tirada just because to go and get that kind of player, which we've been needing a lot over the last couple seasons, is huge for us. But just to be a little bit different, I'm actually going to go and take a different slight angle, and I'm going to say Itakura, actually.
Oh, okay.
Just because a player that wasn't on my radar and I wasn't expecting this, because he got kind of brought in a little bit later as well. After the first couple games, once he got settled in, I think it's just been really, really solid and, helped lock down that back three, which is for me kind of been, the foundation that we've been building from for most of the season. So,
and I think what we've seen from the Nord Curve and really the Schalke fans in general, especially at home, they really embrace Itakura. Every time he makes those tackles, the crowd goes really wild. So everyone really loving Itakura. I'm going to go a different angle. I'm going to give a shout out to both Tirada and Oweyan. Tirada tied for third in goals so far. Guido Bergstar leads the league in goals. Who would have thought? And Thomas Oweyan, third in assists. So he's got 7 this season. He's only 1 behind, I think, the leader. So there's a shots for them. But my best signing, I'm going to go from a different angle as well. Roven Schroeder. I think none of this would have been possible without Roven Schroeder. He had a massive job on his hands. Coming into this, we had a team which no one had contracts for the second division. We had to buy all these players with no money. And he made a team that not only is performing in the second division, as Jack mentioned and Cedric mentioned, they're good enough to be promoted. And I think the work that he's done has been phenomenal for me. So that's the best signing for me, because I think none of this would have happened without Roven Schroeder. Plus his celebrations with Buskins on the sidelines. I love that. I watched both of them together, and Asamoah as well. So let's see. Biggest surprise. Let's go, Cedric. Biggest surprise.
I think Memo Aydin, because it wasn't clear that that we put him on the starting squad, because before the season starts, everyone was looking of Ramftel. He was the guy from the Austrian league with the most assists or the most crosses in the league. I don't know. And he was also a big signing, and I think nobody has expected that Aydin will go in the starting 11.
That's
a good shout. Jack, what are your thoughts on most surprising?
Yeah, I think that's a good shout, just because when we had seen him previously, there were moments that we liked from him, but I don't think he had done anything that hinted at him reaching some of the performances he's had this season. Some of his better performances this year have been above what I would have expected him to be capable of kind of at this point in his progression. So I agree with that. I think the only other one would just be, once again, just the lack of some of the youth players being involved that we thought were going to be involved. That was a surprise for me, just because so many of those guys got a lot of minutes down the stretch last year, and that would have been more sort of like bridging the gap in terms of the squad overhaul. There's a couple key pieces to kind of keep some stability, and we just haven't seen that as much. But yeah, hopefully guys like Adrizi get some additional looks, as we've already talked about.
The sexy pick on Reddit, and a shout out to Reddit. All the people on Reddit, they're awesome, those guys. So definitely go to the Schalke group on Reddit. But the sexy pick on Reddit was Kaminsky, and I'm not against that. I think he's been very much surprising. I didn't expect that from him. But another player that's more surprising for me, I think, is Marius Bulter. When we signed him, I felt like he was just a backup to Terodde. Didn't know what to expect from Bulter. I knew of him from Union Berlin, but again, he all of a sudden became the second player with Terodde, a good compliment to him. He does so much for the team on the wings, at the striker position, and I did not expect that from Bulter, honestly. And I thought that having him up there with Terodde really helped create the opportunities, because I think Terodde couldn't do it by himself, and he needs someone to be next to him to help take some of that pressure away. And so I was pleasantly surprised to see Bulter kind of step up and take that lead position with Terodde in terms of the offensive output. So that's my pick there. You mentioned, Jack, the biggest surprise was the lack of the youth team, this year. I think that's my biggest disappointment, is that we didn't see more of the youth team step up. We started to see now Adrizi and Aydin as well, but there's some other guys we were hoping to see a lot more from the second team come in there and kind of assert themselves, and we haven't seen that. So that's my biggest disappointment. Jack, what's your biggest disappointment this first half?
Just kind of like the way that Fairman just left the squad. I feel bad about it. That's all. I felt like that switch was awkward, sort of a little bit unwarranted in terms of the play on the field. And it's not that, like, if you want to say that, like, Frez's the better keeper, I'm not going to argue with you and say that, like, he isn't. But, like, I just don't think, there was that significant of a gap. And given, how loyal Fairman's been with, like, some salary and renegotiation things and, still sticking with us in the second division, it was unfortunate that he had the job taken away from him as soon as he did. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, Cedric, I think that's an interesting point, because we at least here on the podcast thought it was kind of unfair how that happened, because usually if the goalkeeper plays poor, you understand that, but he wasn't. He was playing actually pretty well, we thought, and then Frazo took over, and it is what it is. But anyway, what is your pick for the biggest disappointment in the first half of the season?
For me, it's Danny Lazza, because he was injured and lost the most of the games. But when he plays, it wasn't so good. And he is a captain. Maybe he's the best signing from us in the summer, and I expected a lot more by him.
Yeah, that's a good shot. I think we all expected a lot when we heard he was signed and becoming the captain, and then it kind of disappeared. We're like, what happened? Granted, he was injury, but okay. No, I agree with that. That's good picks. All right, so let's go to predictions and end this podcast. Second half of the season here, big time, big month ahead, and then we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Jack, we'll start with you. What are your predictions for the second half? And I won't ask you if you think we're going to get promoted. I'm not going to. What are your predictions?
I don't have many concrete predictions other than that. I am just going to go for the ultimate result. I think we're going to finish the season in third place and get the promotion game to get the opportunity to go up. I'm not confident that we're going to be able to overtake St. Pauli and Darmstadt, two teams that have been very good and also looked very good against us when we played them as well. I still have nightmares about. I think was that the Honsack goal. The one where he like nutmegged on the first touch, dribbled through people. I mean, that was probably the best goal that was scored against us all season. But yeah, I'm just gonna be optimistic mildly and say I think we're gonna be at least there to get the chance, the one game playoff to go back up.
And here's a little trivia for both of you, right? If we make it into third place in that playoff game, currently it's held by Augsburg, who just signed Pepe from United States. Pepe, I don't know, I say Pepe. So I don't know if I favor us against Augsburg or any Bundesliga side at the moment outside of Greuther Fürth. So, Cedric, your predictions for the second half?
I think we will end on the second place because for me, St. Pauli is definitely the team who goes in the first division. I think they will be end on the first place, but Darmstadt, I don't think that they get the level above the whole season. And Hamburg, they will go on the first place like always. But I'm very scared also of Werder Bremen because they changed the trainer, and after that they win every game. And now and they have a team which a lot of players from the Bundesliga, so they have a lot of quality in the game. When they don't lose so many players on the transfer market, then I think they have a good team there. And I have a bit scared of Werder Bremen, but I think we will go on the second place.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of good teams in this division. It's going to be hard. You know, you mentioned Darmstadt maybe falling off. Regensburg started so hot this year, and then they kind of fell off at the second half of the first half of the season. So hopefully Darmstadt fall off as well. You still got Hamburg, Nuremberg, a bunch of teams back there, Werder Bremen as well, that could really cause some trouble for us. I agree with Cedric. I think that St. Pauli seem like they're on a mission. They've struggled the last couple of games, but they seem like they're on a mission this year to get promoted. And I know many people will be happy because it's the what do you call it? The hipster pick, right? If St. Pauli going back to the Bundesliga after such a long time, I don't think we can catch them. And I do not want to see us get in the playoff spot because I don't favor us against a Bundesliga club, like I said. So I'm hoping second place is where we're going to finish. Hopefully Toronto and the team going on a tear here, start off the Rückrunde on a good streak here, and then continue that on because frankly we can't afford it, and I don't know if the club can afford it staying in the league another season in the second division. Funny enough, I play Football Manager. I don't know if you guys play Football Manager on a computer, but they asked me who I predicted to come out of the league, and I said St. Pauli, and St. Pauli's like, "You're stupid. We're not that good." I was like, "Okay." Anyway, all right, that's going to wrap this one up. It's been a nice long review of the first half of the season. Cedric, thank you for joining us on this episode. Always good to have you on. I think this is your third time, on with us or something like that, third or fourth. So this is your time. Plug away your YouTube channel. Anything you want to plug, the time is yours, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much to have me on your show. I love it. I'm a great fan. I'm always hear the podcast when I driving to my work. And yeah, you can visit me on YouTube on my channel, Schalke Corner, and also on TikTok or other platforms. I'm on every social media platform.
Yeah, speaking of TikTok, didn't you have like 1 million views recently or something crazy?
Yeah.
It's a big number. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely give Cedric a follow. He's much see content. And again, he does German, but doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it. It's some really good stuff there. And you'll probably learn the language if you watch him. So definitely give him a follow and definitely watch that. Jack, yeah, where can our followers find you?
No, just let me echo real quick how
Please.
thankful I am for Cedric popping on. Always good to have you on, and for us to have a guest on at all, especially for these bigger kind of mid-season review conversations. So thank you. Yeah, and then as always, if you want to follow somebody who almost never tweets, you can follow me at JMMangan, JMMangan on Twitter.
Yeah, this year has been a difficult year, and we relied heavily on our German friends because many of us who are out across the pond don't get to watch this Zweite Liga as much. Jack and I have been fortunate enough, and not many of the American and Canadian viewers have been able to watch. So we try to provide some of that content. And again, we try to steer them towards guys like Cedric and Kesty and Schalke Botschaft, those kind of guys who can always streaming the games, providing content. Anytime you can consume content for Schalke, that's when you should do it. So thank you again for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. And for everyone who's enjoyed the first half of the season, second half is going to be fun. I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, but we can only hope for the best. So until the next podcast comes and the next game, Glück auf.